Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it comes from a translation of a voice note that I received. The translation reads like this: Hello, my brother. How are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? My brother, first of all, I want to say that indeed there is a God in heaven. So what happened to me, my brother, is that I grew up without a father or a mother. My grandmother and my father's relatives, they were the ones that were taking care of me, but they never liked me at all. In fact, they hated me. Even the time when I was supposed to have someone who was going to go and assist me at the Home Affairs office to get a birth certificate, they all said that they could not do it for me because they were suspicious of the fact that maybe I was not my father's child. But this argument of theirs, it was just baseless. Because even right now, if I were to made to stand right next to one of my uncle, who is my father's brother, you even think that I am his son. In our family, we are very light-skinned. And my grandmother, she is the one who is light-skinned. And I look like my grandmother. But my grandmother had the audacity to say that she also didn't believe that I was my father's child. Well, one might say your mother was light-skinned, but from my mother's side, they are all dark in color. They are not as light-skinned as my father's relatives, but still they denied me to the right to have a birth certificate. They never wanted me to have an ID card. They didn't want that. So my brother, as I was struggling like this, when it was time for me to go and sit for my grade 7 exams, what then happened was that I returned back home and I spoke with my grandmother and I told her that I didn't want to miss out on this opportunity of sitting for my grade 7 exams because there was no way that I'll be able to go to secondary if I was not going to sit for my grade 7 exams. But she then brushed it off and she acted as if this was just nothing. She then started telling me that education was not even important at all. She gave me examples of some boys that were working in the village. And what hurt me was that these men that she was giving me examples of, they were all just herding cattle. And that is what she wanted. She wanted me to work as a person who had cattle all day long in the fields with the cattle. That is all that she wanted. She didn't see any bright future for me. Well, God had other plans for me. I then started working for this other man who had a lot of cattle, and I used to look after his cows. So then there was a village headman. This man, he then came to me one day and he said, is it possible that I pay you a small fee so that you can actually look after my cattle as well? I then spoke with him and I said, no, it is fine. Already I am being paid by my boss to do this job. All that you can do is that go and speak with my boss. Ask him if it is possible for me to mix your kettle with his kettle. There is no problem at all. This man, he was the man who later went with me to the Home Affairs office, and under his name, I was able to get a birth certificate because my parents had refused. This village headman, he had tried to speak with my father's relatives about this issue, but the problem was that my father's death certificate, it was being hidden. They didn't want to show me my father's death certificate as well as my mother's death certificate. My grandmother kept on saying that I do not have those documents. So when the village headman came, that was when my grandmother said that at the time when my mother passed away, her relatives came and collected all of her documents. So if I wanted that death certificate, I would have to go to my mother's relatives. They were the ones that were going to give me my mother's death certificate. But this was just a lie because my mother's relatives said that they did not collect any documents at all because they knew that there would come a time when these things will be needed. So I returned back to my grandmother and she shouted at me and I knew that she didn't want me to have a birth certificate. So the village headman felt sorry for me, and he felt sorry because I had been such a good person to him. I had been looking after his cow, not wanting him to pay me a single cent. He went with me and I got my birth certificate, and then I got my identity card. My brother, the day that I got my identity card, it was as if I had done something bad. I was really happy and excited that I was now a recognized person. I had an identity card. So upon my return from the Home Affairs office, I then showed my mom, my grandmother, my identity card, and she was like, this thing doesn't even matter at all. And I was disappointed. But in my mind, I then saw that my relatives, they didn't like me at all. I then decided to go into the city. When I arrived in the city, I then started attending this other church. Mind you, me being able to speak English, it is not like I learned how to communicate in English in school, but it was by God's grace. In this church that I was attending, at this Pentecostal church, they used to preach mainly in English. So I was forced to learn English. So what I will do is that when I'll be back home, I would start reading the Bible. I learned how to speak English by learning the Bible. That is how I taught myself. My brother, whilst I was attending at that Pentecostal church, I then got a job. I was working for this other man. This man, he was a cruel man. This man, he had his truck, and we used to go around picking up some we used to go around and we would exchange bottles, giving people money. Then they would give us their old beer bottles as well as Coca-Cola bottles, and we would go and recycle them, as well as some used scrap metal. That is what we used to do. This man, he was not paying me at all. He was paying me money that was just worthless. Sometimes I would go for months without being paid, and his wife was such a cruel woman. What she will do is that after many months of me not being paid, she will go to town and buy some second-hand clothes for me, and she will say that this is part of your salary. So the reason as to why I kept on working for that man and his wife, it was because here and there, the man, even though I didn't have a license yet, he will say, come and drive. So I knew that the experience that I was going to get by driving his truck, the day that he was going to fire me, he will never be able to get that experience back from me. I was going to be experienced for life. Well, I worked for him until this other man from the same church where I was attending, he then approached me after I had gotten my license, and he said that he wanted me to start driving his car, and he wanted me to use his car as a taxi. My brother, this was like the happiest time of my life. But already my own grandmother, she had actually placed a curse on me. The day that my license came out, I had traveled to the village because this was like exciting news for me. And when I traveled to the village, I then spoke with my grandmother and I told her that God had finally did it for me. I now had a driver's license. Well, my grandmother took my license and she said that she wanted to keep this license of mine throughout the night so that she can give me her own blessings. Initially, when I had traveled to the city, she had refused to give me any blessings. Just before I had traveled to the city, I had spoken with her because she was more like a mom to me, and I wanted her to bless me. I spoke with her and I then said that, Grandma, I am going to the city. All that I am asking for is for you to bless me. And she then said that you are blessed. And the way that she spoke, the way that she told me that you are blessed, it was not like she meant it, but it was more like a curse. But I then said, God, at least she has not cursed me. She just said that you are blessed. And I want you, God, to use her words so that you can bless me. Yes, she had said, yes, she has says that. So when she said that, go, you are blessed, even though she didn't mean it from the bottom of her heart, I then spoke with God and I said, I know that she didn't say it from the bottom of her heart, but please, the moment that she said that you are blessed, please turn her words into blessings. And indeed, when I arrived in the city, God had blessed me, and now I was back in the village with a license. and no one amongst my father's relatives was excited about this news of me having a driver's license. So my grandmother, after I had given her the driver's license, she never returned it back to me. And late at night, my brother, after we all had gone to sleep, like always, I took my Bible, then I placed it under my pillow. When I was dreaming, I then started dreaming, and I saw that my grandmother, she was standing outside, and she was not standing alone. She was surrounded by a lot of witches. Some of these people, they were old people from the same area where we were staying. Then she was standing in the middle of a circle, and what my grandmother was doing was that she was holding this sharp object, and she was actually scratching my driver's license as she was holding it in her hands, so that I won't be able to use it again. When I had this dream, my brother, that was when I had this dream, what I did is that I then went outside and I said, my grandmother, she has my license. Let me go and get it. I woke up and I went to her bedroom, and I found out that her bedroom door was slightly opened. I then saw that my grandmother was not inside her bedroom, so I started looking for her, because all that I wanted was my license, because the dream that I had had, it was quite scary. Someone scratching off the details on my license. I went around the compound until finally I saw my grandmother. She was standing behind this other mud kitchen hut. She was just standing there. It was a full moon, and she was holding my license. And I kept on looking at her, and she didn't even notice that I was actually looking at her and I had found her. By the time that she realized that all this while I had been looking at her, she then said that I had scared her so much. She actually dropped that license to the ground, and she could not even pick it up because she was shaking. She was shaking because of the fear that had entered into her heart. She said, "Why did you sneak up on me like that?" I then said that, I just wanted my license. And she said that I was just blessing your license so that you'll be able to get a job quickly. I then picked up my driver's license. My brother, I left the village the following morning, but I didn't even get the chance to say goodbye to my grandmother, because she woke up so early in the morning and no one even knew where exactly she had gone to. She was like embarrassed. She was ashamed that I had seen her performing that ritual on my driver's license. When I returned back to the city, I then went back and I spoke with that man from church who had recently bought his car. So the deal was that I was going to use his car as sort of like an Uber for the whole year. And he had said that I want this car to buy two more cars, and I am going to give you one of the car. So that was the deal. And this meant, my brother, that I had to work like no man's business since I was not married. What I would do is that I was sleeping in the car and I was not resting. I will operate this taxi throughout the day until it was late. When it was late, then I would go to this other place where there was a T junction. So the reason as to why I used to park in that place, it was because I knew that a lot of people from the it was because I knew that a lot of people from this other location early in the morning, they would come to the main road so that they can hitchhike. It was far much cheaper than using a taxi going to town. So they would hitchhike into my car as well as other small taxis. Then we would take them to town. As usual, I went to this other shop and I bought my soft porridge, and I returned back and I sat like I always do, and then I started eating. Felt that there was someone who had opened the door to my car, so I thought that maybe these were armed robbers that wanted to steal my car. I then woke up. To my surprise, all the four doors of the car, they were all opened up, and my brother, I had locked myself inside this car. So as to how all of these doors, four of them, had been unlocked and opened up, and without me ever even noticing that this is what had happened. This surprised me a lot. When I was still trying to think properly as to what had happened. And then there was this other madman. This madman, he just appeared out of nowhere. This madman, it seemed as if he knew everything about me. He knew all the struggles that I had faced in my life, the way that I had gotten my identity card. This man, the madman, insulted me, and he said that, so you think that madman then insulted me, and he was like, so you think that you are very special simply because you now have a driver's license, you escaped poverty, and you think that you are now very special. That madman then pointed at this other big tree. There was this very huge big tree that was close to the road. He then pointed at that tree and he said, you see that tree? That tree is going to be your grave. You are going to die. You are going to die. That madman kept on pointing at that tree as he was saying that the tree that I am pointing at, it is going to be your grave one day. Well, I just brushed it off, even though it was really weird and strange. One day, my brother, when I was doing my business, just picking up people that were hitchhiking and transporting them to wherever they were going. When I returned back to my usual spot on that night, I was even amazed because along the way, I never even got the chance to pick up anyone. Like the street was dry on like the highway was dry on that night. I kept on driving, my brother, when I was about to approach that big tree that the madman had once pointed at and said that it was going to become my grave. My brother, the car then started accelerating. So I thought that maybe I had made a mistake. I then removed my right foot from the accelerator pedal, but the car, it seemed as if there was someone else who was with me in the car, who was actually driving this car. My brother, the car lost I then lost control of the vehicle. Then the car drove itself towards that big tree, just like that madman had told me that the big tree was going to be my grave one day, meaning that I was going to die. The car then drove itself and it hit that big tree. My brother, I was then taken to the hospital. Whilst I was in hospital, the strange thing that happened is that my grandmother, she then came. When my grandmother came, she never bothered to ask me what had happened when I had that accident. But what she said, it truly shocked me. She said, so God is real. Now I know that God is real, as she was laughing, and she said, if God is real like this, then let me also become a Christian. She was just laughing, and throughout the visitation hour, she never spoke with me. That is all that she said. I can see that God is real, and I want also to become a Christian. This God is a real God. That is what she said. Dear listeners, right there was a narration of a message that was sent to me by one of our brother. Have you ever had any spiritual encounter? If you have ever had any spiritual encounter, please feel free to come to my inbox.